selection of movies, a small selection of TV shows, and I also have a little selection of phrases, pictures of different shows and whatnot. So, let's get started. And we'll start off a movie first, then a TV show, and then a special one. First one is about Saturday Night Fever. Good luck, everybody. What color of suit does Tony wear on the famous movie poster? If you said white, you are correct. What kind of Italian American food does Tony order in the opening scene of the movie? What kind of Italian food, Italian American food, does Tony order in the opening scene of the movie? Of course, it is pizza. Last question. What profession does Tony's brother, Frank Jr., quit, much to the disappointment of his family? The priesthood in the Catholic Church. Well done if you got that. So let's go for the first TV show one. And it's about Frasier. Good luck. Frasier was a spin-off from what long-running sitcom? Of course it is Cheers. What was Frasier's last name? If you said Crane, you are correct. What part did the character Royce Doyle play on the show? And of course, he was Frasier's radio show producer. Last question. Who sang the show's theme song? Tossed salad and scrambled eggs. And of course, it was Kelsey Kramer. Well done if you got those questions right. Let's move on to another movie one. And this one, as you can see, is Fatal Attraction. Good luck, guys. what city does Don have a one-night stand with the sexually obsessed Alex Forrest? If you said Manhattan, New York, you are correct. What does Alex tell Don she is expecting before saying, "I'm not going to be ignored"? I think that's an easy one. A baby. Where does Don attempt to drown Alex? And of course, that is in a bathtub. And of course, the iconic scene. Coming up next here, what family pet ends up in hot water thanks to the vengeful Alex? What family pet? And of course, it is the rabbit. Well done if you got those right. Now let's go for another show. And this time is the show Family Ties. Names of the two of the six members of the Keaton family. Give names of the two of the six members of the Keaton family. You could have said Alex, Malloy, Jennifer, Andy, Stephen, or Alice. Next question. Who was Alex's favorite president? Do you know that one? If you do, the correct answer is Richard Nixon. Name the famous conservative and founder of the National Review whose photo hung above Alex's bed. Name the famous conservative and founder of the National Review whose photo hung above Alex's bed. Of course, it is William F. Buckley. Well done if you got those. Let's go back to a movie. Forrest Gump. Or Gump, sorry. Where is Forrest Gump waiting when he begins recounting his life story to complete? Strangers, what police is he telling this story? If you said at the bus stop, you are correct. To finish the famous phrase uttered by Forrest, "Stupid is as It's Oz. Of course it is. Stupid does. Forrest gets shot while fighting in Vietnam and ends up showing his injury to the president. Where on his body does he get shot? Of course, it is in his buttocks. Upon what does Forrest Gump sit at the end of the movie? A place where his mother once sat on Forrest's first day at school. What was that? Of course, it's a tree stump. Let's move on to another show. We have King of the Hill. Name the lead character who sells propane and propane accessories. If you said Hank Hill, you are correct. What is the Hill's dog called? Named for the wife of a president from Texas. The answer is Lady Bird. What's the name of Hank's Bogle jump spouse, who is also a substitute Spanish teacher? And that is Peggy. The Italian Job. In which coastal Italian city does the film's first car chase take place? Of course, that is Venice. What's the nickname of the explosive expert who lost the hearing in his right ear as a child? What's the nickname? If you said left ear, you are correct. What underground LA location features in this film's big chase scene? And of course, it is the Los Angeles subway. Well done if you got those correct. And now for another TV show, and one that I have talked about a little bit on my DVD videos, Under the Dome. In what state is small-town Chester's Mill trapped under a mysterious dome? What state? And of course it is Maine. Now this is a spoiler alert. If you don't want to know this, put the video on mute. In the season 1 finale, it was revealed to be behind the dooming town. Of course, it is aliens. Last question. What Christine Offer and series executive producer wrote to the novel this show is based upon? He is a famous horror writer. Initials S.K. Who could that be? Of course it is Stephen King. World War Z or Z, depending on what part of the world you're at. In what U.S. city is Jerry driving when the zombie attack begins? Begins with P. Correct, Philadelphia. For what organization does the main character, Jerry Lane, work? United Nations. How are the zombies in this movie different from typical movie zombies? They can move fast. What kind of humans do the zombies ignore in World War Z? The gravely ill, the sick ones. Let's go on to the last show. And of course it is Everybody Hates Chris. Which two words starts every episode title? Of course it is Everybody Hates. The show's title is a riff on what other sitcom? And that would be Everybody Loves Raymond. Last question. Antonio Vargas plays Doc, but what was his role on Starsky and Hutch? Of course, he was Huggy Bear. Okay. Let's go on to another movie. Trading Places. Two questions on this one. How much did the Duke Dukes wager on their social science experiment. How much? Of course, it is $1. What's the sweet last name of the street hustlers, Billy Ray, that the Dukes rope into their game? What is the name? Of course, it is Valentine, whom was played by Eddie Murphy. And let's go into the special round. The Misters. Three questions. What was Chris North's character nickname in Sex in the City? If you said Mr. Big, you are correct. Which of these misters had a ring of bling around his neck? If you said Mr. Magoo, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Of course, it is Mr. T. Last question. Which one of these would you not wish to bump into a dark evening? If you said Mr. Hyde, you are correct. Let's go for another picture one. Name the three movies that these images refer to. The first one beside my thumb. Do you know what that is? Of course, it is E.T. The middle one. Silence of the Lambs. And the last one, of course, is Jaws. Another picture one. Iconic vehicles. Where did a car like the one in picture D take Marty McFly? Of course, it is Back to the Future. lessons racing around the back roads of Georgia in a car like the one in picture C. And of course, it's the Dukes of Hazzard. Which group of mercenaries traveled around in a van like the one in picture B? Picture B. Of course, it is the A team. And in picture A, name the TV show that car is from. Of course, it is Starsky and Hutch. And last picture one. We have an umbrella. Which movie includes the most famous dance routine with an umbrella? And of course, it is Singing in the Rain. Who was the actor that sang and danced under the umbrella in Singing in the Rain? And that is Gene Kelly. Last question. Which classic movie star whose first and second names begin with the same three letters is strongly associated with an umbrella? The first three letters of their first name and their last name are the same. And of course, it is Charlie Chaplin. That ends that special round. Dr. Dolittle. One question. Dr. John Dolittle, played by Eddie Murphy, has a special gift of being able to communicate with whom? Of course, it is animals. That was the hardest question of the night, I think. Absolute classic coming up here. Marketing executive Neil Page tries to get home to Chicago for what holiday? Of course, it is Thanksgiving. An angry Neil uses a certain explicit 18 times in a 60-second run at what kind of counter? A car rental counter. In the cozy bedroom scene, Neil freaks out when Dale tells him his hand is between two what? Those aren't pillows. Last question. What does the weary Neil try to get for $17 on this watch? A motel room. One of the best movies of all time. It's a must watch. Especially since it's coming up to Thanksgiving, guys. Make sure you watch it. I'll do one more. Top Gun. Which cocky character claims, "I feel the need for speed"? Of course it is Maverick. Last question. What was the masculine nickname of Charlotte Blackwood, Maverick's female flight instructor? What was the nickname? Charlie. Hope you're relaxing, everybody.